Hello and welcome to the webinar. My name is Joseph Rodriguez, and today I'm going to be talking about how you can study more efficiently. Now, I'm excited to do this webinar because I want to share with you my specific method that I use for studying just about any topic that I choose to study, and it's something that I am able to do very efficiently. It allows me to meet my objectives of studying, which is to comprehend the information, retain that information, and also recall that information really easily. And my hope is that you can take what you learn on this webinar and apply it to your own area of study and also integrate it into your own study styles, or even just revamp your current study style and implement what I'm going to be talking about, and then you'll be able to get some really good results. And by results, what I mean by results, I'm talking about your ability to comprehend, process, recall, and retain that information for whatever your objective is. Your objective might be to use studying to pass tests, to learn new subjects, or maybe you just want to study because you enjoy studying. So let's go ahead and get started on this webinar. My email address is up on the screen. If you have any questions, you can email me at joe@irisreading.com. So let's talk about my past when it comes to studying. Well, when it comes to studying, I don't really have a past. In fact, I didn't like studying. It wasn't something that I enjoyed, and it wasn't something that I look forward to. Now, fast forward many years later, I realized, like I'm sure all of you have who are watching this webinar, is that if you don't have a good ability to study, if you haven't figured out how to study efficiently, then you're going to have a hard time passing your tests. You'll have a hard time just having more success in life. Maybe there's things you want to accomplish. Maybe you want to advance your career. Well, there's always going to be times when you're going to need to study new subjects or new topics or new areas because you just need to. And if you don't have this area taken care of, if you haven't figured out how to study efficiently, effectively, where you can comprehend the information well, you can recall that information well and retain that information for longer. If you haven't figured that out, then you're going to have a very hard time. So I had to revisit this again. And what I did over the last few years is I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out, studying different resources out there, and I wanted to figure out how we processed information in general, how our brain processes information, and why is it that I had a hard time studying. I had a very hard time studying. I couldn't pass my tests really well. I didn't enjoy studying, and I couldn't figure out a method every time I got into a subject and a type of study. It doesn't matter if it's audio or reading a book or a textbook or watching a presentation or attending a lecture. I just didn't have a good system for studying. So after going through this whole phase of figuring out what is out there and learning from other individuals' experiences with studying, I was able to come up with a very good solution to help myself study more efficiently. And I'm going to share that with you on this webinar. Now, I don't have a particular name for it. We'll just call it my mind map study method. If you've taken one of my speed reading workshops, then you'll know that I'm really big on this concept of mind mapping because I found it has helped me tremendously. And we even released a course in IRIS called the Mind Map Interactive course, in which we cover mind mapping in detail. And it's just something that I'm really passionate about and I'm really excited to talk about because it's helped me so much. So let's talk about the study method. Before we actually talk about the method, let's talk about study objectives. So if you look on the screen right now, we've got 3 objectives, which I'm sure are the same objectives that you have when you study a subject. So it doesn't really matter if you're studying from a textbook, you're attending a lecture, you're watching a webinar. It doesn't matter what it is, you want to do these 3 things. Number 1 is you want to grasp the subject. You want to understand what the subject is about. So if I'm talking about, let's say, the topic of speed reading, you want to know what speed reading is. If you haven't been exposed to speed reading, you might not even know that it's a whole area, it's a whole subject. There's a lot of concepts, there's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of strategies. Speed reading is huge. There's a lot of stuff. You want to be able to grasp the subject. And the level that you grasp the subject is also something you want to keep in consideration based on your objectives of why you're studying this information in the first place. But fundamentally, we want to be able to grasp the subject that we're studying. Number two, we want to be able to take notes to aid in recalling that information. So if you have to write a test or you want to be able to access certain key points at a later date, you're going to go back and refer to your notes. So this is a very important piece because this is one of those areas where traditional study methods, and when I'm referring to traditional study methods, I'm talking about creating notebooks where you write a bunch of notes and bullet points and things like that. Traditional note-taking and studying methods are inefficient. They take a long time and they're not very pleasant. It's not very enjoyable, not very stimulating for our brain. So we need a good way of doing that, and I'm going to share that with you in our method, and that's one of our objectives. Now, the third thing is we want to, which is the most important piece, we want to be able to pinpoint the area where we lack understanding in the subject. So it's one thing to say, hey, you know what, I just don't understand the subject. That's pretty abstract and it's not very helpful. It's one thing to say, I don't understand this specific area of the subject, and these are the questions that I must ask the instructor to be able to understand that area of the subject. Once you've got that level of clarity, where you're able to pinpoint where you lack understanding in the subject, then that's going to give you a whole new level in your ability to study information. And I think it's important that I put more emphasis on point number 3, because I find that just from teaching different workshops on a wide array of topics, that students have a hard time articulating where they don't understand the subject. When I teach a subject, I do a lot of research on it, and I teach, for example, speed reading, a 5-hour workshop. But I've spent a lot of time studying the topics on speed reading, the concepts, the techniques. I've read a lot of books. I've studied from a lot of different speed reading experts. And so I have a lot of information. But if a student can't articulate the question of where they don't understand something specific that I'm talking about, then how am I going to come up with the answer? So you as a student have to have that ability. You have to be able to articulate and pinpoint the lack of understanding of the subject. And this is one of the main areas that has helped me the most, and hopefully will help you also. So let's go ahead and get started. So my method is very simple. We study, we create a mind map, and I'll show you what a mind map is in a moment, which is just a visual representation of an information outline. And then we do some note taking. So we combine these 3 things, which sounds pretty standard, but we do it in a certain method. And the best way for me to explain this is to just jump into the mind map application right now, and we can get started. So what I have right now is Simple Mind, which is the software that I use for my mind mapping. And this is a great piece of software that will allow you to create your mind maps really fast and meet our objectives, our study objectives. So here's how we do it. First thing we do is we create a new mind map. And we do that by placing a centralized topic. And by the way, if you want to learn more about mind maps, I'm not going to cover it in detail. We've got a course at IRIS on the website, the IRIS mind mapping course that I put together, in which we cover mind mapping in detail, and we talk about it in all different areas. But for the sake of simplicity and just to keep this webinar as concise and to the point, we'll create a mind map and I'll just kind of explain it as I go along. So first thing we do is we put in our centralized topic. So say you were attending my workshop, my speed reading workshop. The first thing you would do is create a speed reading centralized topic. And the next thing you would want to do is create a skeleton on what the course is based on. So if you've attended one of my workshops, you know that I create my courses based on mind maps. So the layout of the course is built on a mind map format. So it's very easy for you while you're a student in the workshop to be taking notes in a mind map, because the course is laid out that way. So it's very easy to do it. But fundamentally, if you haven't taken one of my workshops, then you'll know that I'll talk about 3 specific areas of speed reading. I'll talk about speed, I'll talk about comprehension, and I'll talk about retention. So just really quick, I'll give you a quick explanation of this just so I don't lose you. In the speed realm, we talk about how fast you read. In this realm, we talk about how well do you comprehend the information, how much of it are you understanding while you read fast. And then 3, how well do you recall that information, how well do you retain that information so that if you took a test, you'd be able to answer the questions on the test. Now, in these three areas of the workshop, there are many things that we cover. We cover specific topics under speed. We cover specific drills, specific exercises that you can do to improve your speed. And we also cover specific resources. I talk about certain software that can help you. There's a lot of things that I talk about in the realm of speed. And the same goes for comprehension and retention. So here's how my study method works. As you are going through the workshop, and again, you can apply this to when you're reading books and textbooks or attending lectures, it all operates the same way. While you are taking the course, as you are going through it, you are adding to the mind map. And you are adding the information to specific places where it's organized. So right now, I mentioned to you that I teach 3 areas in the speed reading workshop. And in each area, I've got the theory, I've got the drills, the speed drills that we do to improve reading speed, the actual exercises. Now, under the theory piece, there are some specific things that I talk about, like fixation points. So as you are going through the workshop, as I'm talking about the specific elements of speed, the theory pieces of speed, you're taking notes, you're creating a skeleton. So fixation point is one of the main elements. And then I also talk about regression. And I also talk about subvocalization. Now, under these points, there are specific things that I talk about. So one of the things under fixation points that I talk about is macular vision. I also talk about peripheral vision. Under subvocalization, I talk about specific elements, and under regression, I talk about how most of us, when we're reading, we regress about 33% of the time. So as you can see, I'm just taking very high-level notes. Now, as I go through this course, there's a lot more things that I talk about. Your objective is to get the detailed notes also. I mean, you just don't want to create a skeleton, have a high level understanding of what I'm talking about. You're going to want to get the specific definitions. Also, like for example, under macular vision here, you can click this button, this little T button here, and you can put your actual notes in here. So here's where you put your definition of macular vision. Now I'm not going to type it, so I'm just going to paste it in here, the definition, just because it's going to take a lot longer for me to type it, and I'm not that fast of a typer. But as you can see, I've placed a note in here, and if I click OK, one of the problems right now is I don't know that there's a node in there, so I'm going to put a little indicator. So I'm going to select that particular node and click the icon button and just put a check mark, because whenever I put a check mark, that means that there's a node in there. So the next thing, as I talk about peripheral vision, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and the same goes for the rest of the course. So let's actually move on to one of the topics and just add to it. Under retention, I talk about mind maps. I talk about how mind maps can help you with retention. I also give you the definition of mind map, which you can put under notes, which is a visual representation of an information outline. And again, just to know that I placed a note in there, I'm going to add a little icon. Now, as you can see, what I'm doing here is as I go through the workshop, I'm going to move stuff around and make room and add even more elements. Let's look at a mind map that I've created, a bigger mind map that I've been playing around with, one of my other mind maps. Let's talk about this particular one right here, time management. See, if I was taking a workshop on time management and I was sitting through the workshop and we were covering different aspects and topics, my mind map would start to grow and would start to look like this. So again, each one of these nodes over here, I can put specific notes, specific information. So now that I explained to you how you can use mind maps to just create a very rough outline and put your notes in there and then even get more, and as you study, you keep adding to it. And that's your objective. As you study your material, you keep adding to it. Now, you also want to make sure you organize your information in a structured fashion. So you don't want to put your topics all over the place. They're all kind of associated and linked to each other. Like this section right here is all theory in the speed section of the workshop. And under fixation points, I talk about peripheral vision and macular vision and how it applies to fixation points. That goes into this section. As you're creating your mind map, you want to organize your information accordingly, and you want to put in your more detailed information in the notes section. So this is applicable for anything that you're studying. So let's just say you're studying a programming language where you have to put certain code, pieces of code, snippets of code. You can put your snippets of code in here. You can just paste your snippets of code in there. Now, another objective here is you want to be able to pinpoint where we don't understand information. And the easiest way to do that is when you get to a point on your mind map after you're creating your nodes here and you keep adding information to it where you don't understand a topic, you want to flag that topic. So you can actually just click on it and then click the icon button and put a little red flag. And this is maybe where you want to investigate further. You want to dig deeper into it. So what is peripheral vision? Let's flip over to a web browser. Let's go over to, so Wikipedia has a definition for peripheral vision and it's quite detailed. So what you could do right now is you can go in and you can study this information, or maybe you might want to revisit it later. So what I would do is just copy this link, the link to the Wikipedia article or whatever the article is that you're referring to, and then go under peripheral vision here after you've done some research and add a little link to that article. You can do that by just clicking the topic here and then clicking this link button and going and just selecting link to document and placing the web address link right there. So as you're studying, you're adding links, you're adding notes, you're going back and referencing other material, and you're building this mind map, and it's turning into an information repository. So that when you go and study later on, all you have to do is pull up your mind map and then go through each section, make sure you grasp it, follow the links. So for example, if I double click here, we'll end up on the peripheral vision article on the site. We'll just kind of go back. If I click under macular vision, and I, because I put a check mark here that indicates that there's some text in there, if I click on this, I can put my notes in here. So that being said, if you go and create this on something that you're studying, you'll find that there's no place in here where you can miss out a detail. You've got a high-level overview here, which is what the mind map is about. You've got a skeleton where information is organized a certain way, and then your more detailed information is stored in your links to. And by the way, we linked this to a website, but you can also link it to a document that's stored on your computer. As you can see, I can just click this button here and select a document, maybe a PDF document or a Word document that has a lot more information in it. And you can link it accordingly. So now we have a centralized place where we can go to and refer to when we're studying, and it helps us access the information a lot easier. Now the benefits of doing this is that because it's so centralized, because they're so easy to create and navigate and move around and organize, is that you'll be able to study a lot more efficiently because it takes you less time to create something like this. As you see, I created this one as an example. It's not going to be as detailed as an example as if you've seen one of my mind maps when I actually study something. That's a lot more detailed, but however, you get an idea of how we do it. So again, let's recall it. The first thing you would want to do, I'll just kind of collapse this like this, is put in your centralized topic. If it's the topic of speed reading, then you're going to have to add your main points of speed reading. And if you attend one of my workshops, then you'll know it's speed, comprehension, and retention. So after you added your main points, as you go through the workshop and you're studying, you add your subtopics to that topic, and any other information, bits of information that you get, you add over here. If it's very detailed and specific information and long explanations, then you could link to it by using the web link, or you could use the note feature to add your specific notes in there. Then when you don't understand a subject and you want to ask the professor or the instructor a question, you can flag it, and you can even do things like add your actual question in here. So you can ask the very specific question, like what part of the eye controls peripheral vision. I just want to move this a little bit here. And you could set another indicator to notify you that this is a question you want to ask. So maybe use another icon like this little person here. So this indicates that you're going to ask this question. And as you're sitting there in the workshop and using your computer and using Simple Mind and creating this mind map, you can be very clear and specific. It's really quick, it's really easy, and it's a lot more organized. So there we have it. That's my exact study method that I use. It's a very efficient study method, very simple study method, but one that works really well. And I find that this method has been better than any other study method that I've used. And because with Simple Mind the information is organized in a way that it is, I'm able to access that information and study that information a lot more efficiently. And I'm not missing out on any details, because any relevant subtopics that I don't understand, I've got linked to certain pages, or any information that I have noted, it's done in the notes section, and everything works really well. So I hope you got some really good information out of this webinar. You learned something new where you can take in and apply in your study method. I recommend that you go out and you try this method and see how it works for you. And if you have any questions, you can email me at joe@irisreading.com. Thank you for watching.